Dr. Hemmitt, it is great pleasure that we're here with you again tonight in the studio here.
It's great to be back.
One of the things that I'd like to do is you have a book in front of you on Egyptian history and kind of like the history of the West. But one of the history of Europeans' encounter with Africa. One of the things I'd like to begin with is there's one picture in there.
Yeah, I think I just slipped up and
where the European
lost it, but I'm gonna find it.
is saying that that he had the unfortunate pleasure of seeing the African king order the decapitation of his, several of his villagers to celebrate this European arrival.
Well, first of all, I'll get the picture and we'll put it on the film for the people to see. But first of all, certain things just don't even make historical sense. Now, clearly, the African had been, at this particular time, hundreds of years of antagonistic elements against outside people. So there's no way that he's going to celebrate the same old oppressor to come. You see what's coming in.
Well, I'll put the picture up there a little later. What I want you to do is kind of look into the camera. So
yeah. Okay.
you
Yeah.
can talk directly.
Yeah, you know, the oppressor coming in. Remember now, this is Victorian art, which goes along with the same the same attitude towards black people, because remember now, majority of the time the discovery of the Nile was late 1700s, early 1800s, so we weren't even out of slavery yet on this particular aspect of it. We know that the Napoleon expedition actually started the whole discovery of the Nile again, rediscovery of the Nile. And you know, Napoleon didn't really necessarily like blacks after getting his ass kicked by Toussaint L'Ouverture. So my point is you know, my point is we're not just talking about somebody who's a racist based on some political stance. We talking about a person that's based on the nature. And so it just goes without saying that as we go deeper into it, we're talking about a person that also, I mean, if he calls himself superior, and one brother made this point, if this man calls himself superior, why is it that he has to literally hate other people? You figure if you're superior over most of the races on the earth as they claim, then you would have a little more compassion for the simple fact that you feel you better than them. You know, you wouldn't really get mad at a dog for being a dog. You figure you could superior. So my point is why is it if he thinks he's so superior, why is it that he never gets along with nobody on the planet? And never has had a history of getting along with anybody on the planet. It's always a master-slave relationship.
Bobby, maybe before we go a little further, you said something tonight about the white man being made. I think you said you had read that. And that some people were made without a soul.
Yeah.
I think we need to
Get
explore that a little bit.
Yeah.
And if we can,
Well, you know, the last tape I did with you, I went into some of the science on that. And basically we just have new light into this. As a matter of fact, it was so much information in the ancient world that I've come across. I put out a book, The Human Artificial, back in 1994. And man, the book has been Xerox so much until it's just a piece. It's like connect the dots with the graphics breaking down. But since then, I mean, I've found so much information on the European being created that supports the whole Yakub theory. Till literally, I would have to spend all my time just in this subject alone. It's just that much information. Some of the most hard evidence is what is called the corpus hermeticus. Now let me explain what this is. When the Greeks came into to Egypt in the Ptolemy period, they wrestled a whole lot of stuff out of the Library of Alexandria that they so-called built, or also the temples. And some of these materials that they wrestle out of there or stole was in actuality called the Hermetic materials, which is the wisdom of Tahuti. The wisdom of Tahuti. So we're talking about not only that, we're talking about, as some people say, that this particular stuff is the basis to Western civilization, this particular corpus hermeticus, and which is very advanced stuff. I mean, so much that it hadn't even been explored. And in so many words, some of the stuff in the Hermetic text, one I'll give you, because we'll deal with several of it tonight. One will be, there's mention in there that the biggest mistake that the Egyptians made was to make another man. Or the biggest mistake that the most ancient man made was to create another man. Now this is documented in the so-called Hermetic materials, which is the wisdom of Tahuti. Tahuti in Greece is Hermes. So Hermes is the Egyptian god Tahuti. The Hermetic material, are we still on?
Oh, yeah.
The Hermetic material is very advanced stuff. As a matter of fact, they don't even mention it, but it is basically some of the origin of Western thought. It covers a lot of the basis of Western thought, and basically this has been reserved for the last 700 years since the Moors were kicked out of Spain. Most of your Hermetic material has been reserved for the secret societies. Several books you can get if you can find them. One is called Thrice Great Hermes by G.R.S. Mead. The other one is called Hermetica by Walter Scott. All of these are still in print. Walter Scott's book is in print. You can get the G.R.S. Mead one in print. It was in print in hardback in 1992 for $50, 3 volumes for $50 with black and buy it. So as a result, now you can go to the Kessinger Publishing Company, which is, they do a lot of out-of-print books. They took up where, what's the name left off? Health Research, which now somebody bought the Health Research Company, and now they are now printing the books in regular format. The newer book is called Hermetica by Copenhaver. The other 2 books came out at the turn of Thrice Great Hermes came out at the turn of the century. It's 1907. There was 2 other books that's still available called The Virgin of the World is one, and The Divine Pomander. Divine Pomander is part 1, and The Virgin of the World is part 2. They came out in the late 1800s by Anna Kingsford and Maitland. I can't think of the last names, the guy's first name, but Anna Kingsford. It's called Kingsford and Maitland. The Virgin of the World and the Divine Pomander, and both of those books are still in print. So that's the 18th century stuff. The 19th century would be Thrice Great Hermes, 3-volume sets, 1907 by G.R.S. Mead, which is now in print by Kessinger Publishing Company. Then in the 1930s, you would have Walter Scott's book, Hermetica. And this is the one that I'm quoting from, about, the biggest mistake is for the ancient man or the Egyptian is the biggest mistake that they made was to make another man. Then your newer book that came out in 1992 is by Copenhaver, which is the same Hermetica. Now in all these Hermetic texts, it also goes in to say that there's various degrees of people that's on the earth. One of the degrees of the people that come to earth is the person who has the soul or the original blueprint. The other degree of the people that's on the earth is some of them, a great deal of them, don't have souls. And it literally says there are people with souls and people that's soulless. All of this is introduced in the Hermetic material. Another thing, one of the greatest things in the Hermetic material is you have a section called the Perfect Sermon. Now the Perfect Sermon is comprised of a conversation that's going on between Imhotep, which is the first father of medicine, and the god Tahuti. So literally he is either having a conversation by channeling this information and writing it down. And this was a conversation that was going on between spirit and human at the time. The god Tahuti the God took, so it's actually his own inner self that's dealing with this particular information. You will know Imhotep because he is known in the Hermetic material as Asclepius, which, as you know, is the god that the Hippocratic Oath is praying to, is given homage to, which is nothing but Imhotep, which is also documented in the new book, Copenhagen's book, on Hermetica, 1992. But in the actual book, and in the actual perfect sermon, which you can get in all the ones that give you that same caption, which there's a new book that just came out, I think right after Christmas, called Hermetica, another one that actually deals with it. A little smaller book, but it doesn't have the great volume of the other books, but it does have the prophecy. And the prophecy is a prophecy that is going on between Imhotep and his higher self, which in this particular case, he's channeling from the great Godhead, Tahuti. And in there, Tahuti tells him that I have you know that Egypt is the envy of the whole world. It is the most spiritual and centerpiece of the whole world, Hemmitt. It also says that not only that Egypt, that the gods that used to rule in heaven are now transferred down on earth, and they now rule in the domains of Hemmitt, which is the fountain piece at the center of the earth. He also says, but there will become a time when Egypt, or Hemmitt, well, it's saying Egypt in the text, will not be as it is the glory of the world. And the gods will abandon Egypt. And it said, what once used to be the envy of all religions and of the world will now become one big graveyard. And it says those Egyptians in the later days will take on a form where in so many words it goes and says that the weak man that will be on the earth will be considered strong, and the strong man will be considered weak. And Egypt will be overrun with all different other barbaric races. This is what it says. It says the pious man, which you know is spiritual and righteous, will be considered impious. And the impious man will be considered noble and wise. It also goes in to say that you Egyptians, or you pious people, the people that's impious will be admired and considered noble, but you Egyptians, or you Camites, will be treated as a common criminal in these particular days in the future.
Now that's actually written.
This is actually written, and this is written in every Hermetic text you can get. You can find that particular one. The two that's available right off hands is Copenhagen's Hermetica. And the new one that just came out, although it's a small book, it does put that prophecy on page 1. You see what I'm saying? On Hermetica. But any of the Hermetic texts will give you that particular one.
Now, at what point, what year or what period was that written in?
We're talking about something. We're talking about something that, although Imhotep, who builds the first pyramid at Saqqara, is mentioned, we can say that these texts, although he's getting the same thing, we can say that these texts can go back at a minimum of 5,000 years. You see. It also goes in and says, because he starts to crying, Imhotep starts to crying. They say, "Oh, Asclepius, why are you weeping?" And Imhotep, in so many words, said, "Well, listen, will you think we'll ever get out of this?" The man said, "Well, death will be preferred than life." Imhotep said, will we ever get out of this? He says, Ma'at will be established again, which is, balance, order. He says, but where? He said, it will be a land that is not yet established, that all races from around the world will speed to by various forms of transportation, that is not yet established, and they will all go to this particular land by various forms of transportation. He said, and in that land there will be an extremities or a remnant of Egypt in that land. Now he's both talking about implant or supplanting of the original Egyptian through lineage, through slavery that will be in the land. But he's also talking about a new Egypt that was built by Benjamin Banneker and the Moors, and happens to be Washington, D.C., as well as New York City, as well as all major cities have some type of Kemetic structures to them. One of your newest Kemetic cities is Atlanta, Georgia. I think I explained that on the last tape, where all of the buildings are built based on Syriac architecture, where they are built in the circumference of the cycle of Sirius, which is taken from a papyrus from the British Museum, which is also mentioned in the Hermetica book by the Thrice Great Hermes by G.R.S. Mead. But if you can't find it, you need to get Murray Hope's book, Ancient Egypt, the Sirius Connection, and she has a section in there called Syrian Heritage, where she quotes that actual part on how you build a city with Syriac architecture using pyramids, temples, and obelisks. And that new city that's built that way is Atlanta, Georgia. It's full of pyramids, temples, and obelisks. But all cities have remnants of that. So, in so many words, they say it will be a new Egypt. So the new Egypt will be not only a place to structure, the dollar bill, you've heard all the stuff before, but also they say there will be a people that will be in this land at the last days. And these people will reestablish Ma'at, or literally the kingdom of heaven. Do you know that your Exodus story is copied from this Hermetic text, where they say you'll be in a land in bondage for 400 years that you don't know? Well, before it was Egypt, it was this far off land. Egypt had the same Exodus story. It is this Hermetic text. After, your Torah is written 400 years after the death of Moses, of this Musa priest. And they took the same Hermetic knowledge to make that story, but they historicalize it, and you think that happened in Egypt, when it's called eschatology, and it happens now. So the Exodus story is a story of us in America. That same story travels to Scotland by the Moors in text that's now under the custodian of the Rosicrucians, or some ancient, or some secret society that's been established since the Moors. And in that text, we don't have the actual text because it's property of that secret society, but they made a movie of that text in 1985 called Highlander 1, where Sean Connery is talking, and he said, we are immortal. He said what? He said, we are immortal and we cannot die. We are supposed to roam the earth until the last days, where we will be gathered together in a land that's not built yet. And this is somewhere in the Dark Ages, or right after the expulsion of the Moors, or might be during the time of the Moors, of a land that's doesn't exist yet. And the gathering came about in 1985, when, it was basically modern time, as in New York City. So basically still talking about Egyptians or ancient Africans in America. You see what I'm saying? Now, did you see the movie The Matrix?
No, I missed that.
Well, the movie The Matrix is based on a series of talking about this entire realm that we live on is only an illusion. It's only a series of emanations that is projected through the brain but does not necessarily exist. Well, I've been talking on this stuff since 1995. They just put out a movie to talk about some of the stuff that I've been talking about. But the movie is also verbatim from the Hermetic text, as well as, because the Hermetic text, and I guess we should call this lecture Hermetica, since we're going through that, but we're going to go through some other phases also in a few minutes. The Hermetic text also talks of where there's a conversation with Tahuti talking to his son Tot. Now Tot of the Tat cross is also just talking about the soul. So this is a conversation that's whoever is recording it down. So it's a series of channels that's going on. Mm-hmm. And in there he says, Tahuti reveals to him that this doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. The guy said, well, wait a minute. How can this not exist? He said, if this was real, it could never deteriorate. For the mere fact that this thing is always deteriorating, and nothing on this particular planet never really stays the same as it is. It's always in a process of regeneration or deterioration, means that it's not real. That which is real is forever. Mm-hmm. These are a series of illusions. He said, well, is not the man, the baby, real? The woman real? He said, no, the man and the baby and the woman, they are not real as with the way you perceive them in the physical. They are a series of emanations of something that's real someplace else. And it just so happens to appear to be real. It's only a projection of the soul. But somewhere down the line, the soul started believing that this was real. Now, in other texts, it says when man fell into the physical realm, at first he had the knowledge of the universe and everything else. But as time went on, he fell prey to the physical body, and all of the awareness dried up into 5 senses, and he only fell prey to the 5 senses that is around him, and he lost that connection to that other world. In Australia, they call it the dream time. And you go to that other world when you go to dreams, when you go to sleep at night. And it's a whole different world that doesn't look nothing like this. But because your mind because your brain can only receive things on this realm, by the time you wake up, it tries to compensate for the things that you saw on that realm. It tries to put physical objects that you know in this world, and that's why sometimes the dream don't make no sense. That is because the phenomena that is in the other dimension cannot coincide in this dimension. So your psyche has to overcompensate for those particular things, and sometimes that's why you having sex, or you riding a bicycle, or eating ice cream, or some crazy shit. But every now and then you have what is called lucid dreaming, where literally you wake up in your dream and you are aware of different things. So this particular material has a whole lot to do with the basis of Western civilization, as well as the white boy has synthesized this stuff now. Whereas the education that he gives most black people, the reason why he can afford to educate us, is because somewhere around the late 60s, they abandoned all Western education. And they're not even on the stuff that we generally get educated, trained for a job. They're on new stuff, quantum physics, chaos mathematics. You see, so this whole holographic universe that I was telling you about that doesn't exist, this is accepted fact in physics now and in science, and there's a great book out called The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, which is not no voodoo book. You can go right to the physics section and get this. There's several books on the holographic mind. There's a book called June Singer's book, Seeing Through the Physical World. You see, seeing through the physical world. You see. So they have abandoned what we call basic education. There's an excellent book out called The Magician, The Studies in Affected Magic. Now I want you to get the book, and you don't even necessarily have to use the magic in there, as long as you just get the concept of what's going on. And the basic premise to this concept is that your subconscious mind can do anything in the physical world that you want it to do. You just have to convince the subconscious mind that what you want it to do is real. You ever heard Think and Grow Rich? If you can believe, achieve, and these are metaphors, but there's a greater science on that. It's a book called The Magician, The Studies in Effective Magic by Philip Cooper. And I want you to just get the book, cost about $13, just to understand the subconscious mind. And it says the subconscious mind creates what you want. Even after you die, it keeps creating for you. It's just that since you was a child, you have been convinced of certain facts that somebody gave you, the church, the teachers, your parents, the society. Now, what is a fact? Do you know that 90% of what we thought was fact 100 years ago has been disproven? Just about 60% of what we thought is fact in 1970 is just been disproven when it comes to European science. So because you think something is a fact now doesn't necessarily make it real. And this is the problem that we have as Africans, that we have bought into the white man's world, that everything has to be a certain way of reality, and reality is only a perception. You see what I'm saying? Reality is only what you told yourself it was. Doesn't necessarily mean what it is, what it really is. You see what I'm saying? And black people, the history of black people that has defied all what we call fact. We have shown just from the first, just for the 90 years of the 20th century, we have shown that everything that's so-called fact doesn't necessarily register with us. Give you an example. I thought in 1977 that black people had come up with all the dances they could. It's just dancing. And this was years before break dancing, that pop lock, just things where, just years before MC Hammer. You see what I'm saying? So it was saying that there is no end, mathematical equation, there is no end in what the black person can do with his human body just in the sphere of dancing. You see? So because somebody says something is a law of a fact, you see what I'm saying? That's just his perception of the fact. In this case, whenever the European gives us a fact, it's usually the opposite, because he keeps the general information that he has about the reality of the world. He keeps that as an exclusive set. Now, to an exclusive people. Now, there's only one other thing also too. See, now it's a little bit different. He doesn't have to keep things locked away in vaults. Just about everything now is printed in books. And you can go to your regular store and just about read just about everything I'm talking about. It's just that now we live in a non-literary society. Whereas he will put it in a book because he knows books is damn near obsolete. You're not going to spend the time to go look the stuff up. You see what I'm saying? That's why we have to do tapes like this. So the real secret to the secret society, there are no secrets. Everything is revealed. It's just that the people are so dumbed down and so zombified until if it ain't about making